Hello, everybody, and welcome to Will's Women and Wealth. I'm your host, Attorney Elsa W. Smith. And first of all, Happy New Year. We are in January of 2023. It's a new year and a new you. This podcast, just so you know, is where we are going to lead you holistically from overwhelmed to empowered through estate planning. Um, as I said, I am your host, and I want you to feel comfortable and relaxed in this community that we are forming. This is a community for women who value their health, wealth, and the legacies that they are creating. Each episode is going to bring you interviews in the areas of finance, law, mental and physical health, real estate, and more. I'm also going to share episodes, educational episodes that answer your questions on wills and estate planning topics. This is a community, so I want you to engage. So let's start growing together. Do you have a question or a topic you'd like us to feature on Will's Women and Wealth? Well, contact us on social media or leave a comment. If you're catching this live today or catching this on the replay, we welcome you to leave a comment. Let us know if you like the show. This and all future episodes will be available in our libraries on YouTube and Spotify. So with that, let's get started. How many times have you seen commercials about, say, buying a new home or even buying your first home? And perhaps you've tried to DIY the process only to be disappointed in the end. And now you're discouraged about getting in the market again. My guest today is a thoughtful and experienced realtor who is going to teach us all about how real estate can be an important part of your wealth building strategy. I am pleased today to be joined by Shawanda T. Robinson. But before I bring her on, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Shawanda T. Robinson is a knowledgeable and energetic realtor who stands out because of her strong passion and great dedication, ensuring that real estate buyers, sellers, renters, and investors have a seamless experience as they reach their real estate goals. As a realtor licensed in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, Shawanda leverages her extensive knowledge about the local real estate market and surrounding areas to guide, advise, and educate her clients, effectively empowering them to make well-informed decisions. As a great negotiator with attention to detail, Shawanda goes above and beyond to help home buyers accomplish their American dream of owning a home and guide them in building generational wealth, something that we're very passionate about on this podcast. As a seller representative specialist, it's called an SRS, Shawanda is a valuable asset to sellers. She goes all out to ensure that sellers gain value, for their homes and sell them at top dollar. She's also a military relocation professional, an MRP. In that capacity, Shawanda counts it as her greatest honor to serve military families, veterans, and active military personnel who put their lives on the line to protect their country. With extensive experience in the industry spanning over 7 years, Shawanda understands that excellent service and delivery is the cornerstone of any successful real estate professional. She's keen on forming strong, long-lasting relationships with her clients based on a shared vision of success and mutual trust. She has been featured in Voyage Baltimore and Canvas Rebel, in 2022, she was a panelist at the Women's Empowerment Brunch, Still Standing, the Power Play, held in Bethesda, Maryland. And with that amazing introduction, she's a phenomenal person. Let me bring to you, to our audience, Shawanda Robinson. Shawanda,
Hello,
welcome to the show.
hello. Good afternoon, everyone, or wherever you are. Good afternoon, where we are, and thank you so much. I am. That was a phenomenal introduction. I am so excited to be here, and so happy that social media connected us.
Me too. It is, social media is something, not only social media, but just technology in general
Mhm.
is something that really has transformed not only my industry, but I'm sure yours as well,
Oh yeah,
especially over the last couple of years. And we're gonna get into that
correct.
during the course of the interview. But before we start, um, tell us a bit about your personal and professional story and kind of describe your road to becoming a realtor.
Okay. Sure. So I am actually a second generation Washingtonian. My mom was also born in DC. She was born in Georgetown, DC, and we both actually went to the same high school, which is Roosevelt. Graduated from the same high school, Roosevelt High School in Petworth. So I grew up in Petworth. My dad still lives in Petworth. I am currently residing in Lanham, Maryland, and I real estate has just been homes have always been a passion of mine. So I would always look at houses, and I wanted to buy houses, and then I was kind of scared, and then I finally actually bought my first house in 2005, actually. And in that experience, it was what was the best word for it? I had no idea what I was doing when I bought my first house. So that actually translated into how I interact with my first time home buyers. So it's very important to me to tell them things that I did not know or wish I had known,
Right.
or in that process, because it's such a quick process, to let them know that I always have their back, that whatever I'm doing, I'm working towards making sure that your experience is a good experience. And I don't want you to go through this process and be like, what just happened, and have no idea what happened. So I'm very, I always ask my client, tell my clients, please, if you have questions, come to me. I want to answer them so that I can make you feel comfortable throughout this process, because it's a, very quick process. And sometimes you can feel lost, but I always want to make sure that my clients don't feel the way that I felt when I purchased my first house. So that, so prior to real estate, I worked for NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. I was a program specialist there. NASA was a very so I look at everything. So we talk a lot of, about mindset and things. So my mindset was different when I first was at NASA to where I am now. But now that that experience is over, I look at that as the stepping stone, and it helped me become who I am today. It was not for me. You have to find your purpose, the things that make you
Mhm.
happy in life.
Mhm.
NASA did not make me happy, which is how I ended up actually becoming a realtor, because I had to find out what worked for me. I
Right.
knew that I was not happy, and I knew that I was not living to my best potential. I knew that this could not be the life that was destined for me. That
Mm.
could not have been the life that was destined for me. The life of me, wanting to wish the weeks and the days and the everything away. And I was like, there's so much, you only like a couple of days out of the week. There's 7 days and you like two. So that was like Friday night and Saturday. So I was like, you really have to find something else to do with your life, something else to feel fulfilled in life, because we only get one, to my knowledge. And I had to, and it's it's your responsibility for your happiness. It's your responsibility after a certain age. You can't blame what happened in your childhood. You can't blame anybody. You have
Wow.
to figure
Mhm.
out something else, and I had to figure out something else. And so I had wanted to be a realtor for a while and put it off for who knows. Somebody may have talked me out of it. I may have talked myself out of it. You know, anything could have happened.
If I want to jump, forgive me, but the fact that you worked at NASA, and in whatever capacity you worked at, a lot of people be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna like grind it out here. I'm really not happy, but it's NASA. So yeah, you know what I'm saying? And you've got whatever benefits and so forth, come along, with that. And I just didn't want to like rush through that, because that thought process, that emotional journey that you went through, I don't want to minimize that, because there are a lot of women who are watching that are probably they're in corporate, or they have a business of their own, or they're working for someone or what have you, and they're not happy.
Correct.
They're not getting in touch with their why, right?
No.
And that's not fulfilling you.
No.
So I believe that's got to take some sort of, emotional and then physical toll. I mean, if you keep going to a place every day, and granted, I understand, there are bills to be paid,
Yes.
but at some point, it's like your soul starts dying.
And it's like living but not living at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's really what it was. I really had to dig super deep, because I kept saying, this can't be, this can't be what you're supposed to be doing. And it took a long process of honestly like going through, okay, what things can I do that can also, because as you said, you still have to survive. You can't live for free. This is really not that, some people can, but it's not that common,
Right.
So I was like, well, how, what is it that I can do? What are the things that I enjoy? And so I really pulled out a pad and paper and started making a list of things that I enjoyed, and how that could translate into a career, into a passion, into making money off of these things that make me happy in doing. And real estate. So there were two things at the top of that list. That was real estate, and that was like cooking and catering, because I love to cook for my family and my friends. And so those were the two things at the top of the list. And I was like, well, if you cook, so I really, took a process of the pros and cons of both, and which ones would be better for me. And real estate was the one that because it was something that I had talked about doing for a while and hadn't done. I always loved looking at houses. I had taken interior design classes. All of these things were the reason that real estate topped out cooking, or being a caterer, or opening a restaurant, whatever that could have been.
Well, that's important and interesting that you mentioned that, because and for the viewers, you not only had the desire, you had the proclivity to do, like a couple things, but you took it a step further. You took a class in real estate, right? Because it's not enough just to want to do something, but you need to have that backing, that training, to just really solidify it in your mind, whether this is something that you want to do. The last thing you want to do is invest, to go all in and then realize it's not something you want to do. So taking the class and stuff helped you kind of firm up your belief that this is what you wanted to do.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, real estate, let's do real estate. And so I ended up finding because you have to be a licensed realtor. You're not supposed to practice real estate without an actual license. Some people do.
Oh my.
You are to take a course and pass a course, and then pass an exam in order to be a licensed real estate agent or a licensed realtor, which are two separate things. However, so I took the class. I went to work and was still going to work at NASA, and I took a class. So I worked in Southwest DC. My class was on Wisconsin Avenue in Northwest DC. So I would leave work, as soon as I left work, working 10 9-hour days. And then I would go to classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays every night from like 6 to 10 or something like that for at least, I think it was at least 5 months, maybe I did that. And so then after that, passed the course. And then eventually I started my real estate career at a brokerage called Green Line. And I started there. But it took me a minute to activate my license. But yeah, the classes and everything, that was a grueling time because it was work, and work was grueling, and then it was class. So, but yeah, I had to find out. And then after I took the classes, I was like, okay, took a little bit of time. And then I said, well, let me go ahead and activate this license. And I started working. In my first month, I actually started my first ever deal. Like I activated my license in October, and probably a couple of weeks later, I started my first actual deal.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yes, which was real estate is definitely a hands-on. You could probably attest to that in your career. Like you can take all of the, the knowledge of the books and everything, but until you're actually practically working in it,
Absolutely.
it's hard to, you have to get that experience, that hands-on experience. So it was actually good for me, although it was like, what do I do? What do I do? And I leaned on my broker so much during that time frame because I literally just started. So I had really no idea other than what was taught in class. But it was a great experience. And my buyer did not even know until the day after we closed. We sat down and had dinner, and I told him, and he was like, really? This was your first deal? And that was so, that was empowering because it was like he had no idea.
Now, Shawanda, wait a minute. It seems like everything has happened like this whirlwind, like you pass, you get your license in October, then boom, you got your first deal going. Again, I'm just, because I know the people are watching me like, oh, it's a fairy tale story. No. Were you still at NASA at the time, or had you already transitioned when you got this deal? I just want to
Yes. So for clarity, I definitely was still at NASA when I got this first deal. I stayed at NASA. I got licensed officially in October 2015. Started in DC, and then I stayed at NASA for almost a year later. My last day at NASA was September 30th, 2016. Mm-hmm. So it took me a year of working real estate. I say this to people all the time, if I had the type of, people think sometimes when you have a government job that it's just like you're just twiddling your thumbs, you're relaxing. I want to first say that 95% of the government does not operate on the mindset of, oh, good government, and you just, relax and chill at work. But government workers work, okay? And I definitely had the type of job where if I had that type of job, I probably would have, still kept the job and still did real estate if I had the type of job where I could have accommodated doing both. But I came to a time point when I was like, the demands of my job were too much for real estate because I've enjoyed doing real estate, and it became like my job was in the way. And so that's the thing that happened. It was like, okay, you have to make a decision because you're not going to be able to do both because of the demands of the job full throttle. And I wanted to, again, I was like, I really like it. I think, and I'm in my mind, I was like, you can do this. I started getting deals. I started social media. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew people needed to know I was a realtor. So I started with posts. I started, figuring out things to post and showing my activities at open houses, going to show houses.
Well, wait a minute now, because I'm going to stop you there, because now I want, it's for everybody following. So now you're all in. You've made the transition. Left NASA, so now you're an entrepreneur. You are doing this, right?
Correct.
And with all, you and I talked on show prep about the importance of mindset and having the right attitude. So you got that. You're pushing forward. What were some of the mistakes that you've made as an entrepreneur?
Okay, so some mistakes that I would say that I made as an entrepreneur are definitely one, not knowing fully the correct business entity to be
Mm,
for as far as tax purposes are concerned.
yeah.
So I started out just using my social security number
Mhm.
at that. Then I ended up getting the EIN, but I stayed like a sole proprietor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I eventually got an LLC. Then eventually found out from my CPA that I should have been a S corp instead. So
Mhm.
there was a lot of trial and error with understanding the business practices or the business entity that you should be. So I think that that's something that was definitely a learning lesson. So that is definitely one of the biggest mistakes. Not fully understanding that, you are really an entrepreneur. I was like, okay, I'm doing real estate, but this is really a true business. You are a business owner. So when I adopted that mindset of knowing I am an actual business owner, that also changed a lot of things as well. But definitely the entity was one of the biggest things. And just I would say that's probably the biggest thing I would say.
And something else that, because from every hiccup, from every obstacle, there is something, to learn. Those of us that are in a growth, have a growth mindset, understand that, if once you stumble, there's what are you taking away from it? What are you learning from it? So what I gathered from it was that, you reached out to a professional. You had the
Yes.
assistance of a professional, which is a lesson and a
Absolutely.
takeaway, I think, not only for you, for me, for everybody watching, is that, you don't know what you don't know,
You don't know.
right? So it's in your best interest to surround yourselves with professionals. And I'm sure in your industry, certainly I know plenty of folks that are in real estate, and they have networks of people that help
Absolutely.
them be their best. So is
Yeah.
that fair to say?
Yes, that is a definitely a fair assessment. I leaned on my realtor friends. Who are you using? We talk and sharing of information is a big thing. You can't find out stuff and like hold it to yourself. You have to pass it along. So I definitely leaned on um all of my realtor friends, found the great tax professional who could help me with all of my situations because I didn't do things the proper way and get me on the right track because it was definitely a learning lesson. However, I know now, I know now, and I can say to other people because a lot of realtors do, create LLCs. However, I had to switch from the LLC for the reasons of this, of tax purposes, because you're still taxed as a sole proprietor when you are LLC, is what I learned but I'm not a tax professional, so don't take that as tax advice.
I really, yeah, neither am I. Please consult your tax professional.
Correct.
One of
But
them
for
maybe
me,
watching right now.
right, for me and my tax professional, we chose that to go a different route of other than the LLC.
Well, Shawanda, now you were on this journey before, long before 2020.
Yes.
How did the pandemic affect your business? And the follow up to that is, how did you pivot?
Yeah. So when the pandemic happened in March 2020,
Mhm.
um, I was in the middle of several different deals, working with several different buyers. And then we in this area, because as everybody was trying to figure it out. And one of the things that stopped, there was a temporary ban on us showing houses.
Mm.
So if you can't show houses, you can't get people under contract, which means you don't have a paycheck coming soon if you
Wow.
can't do that.
Wow.
So that was so 2020 on top of just personally, professionally was really a lot of pivoting, as you said, because at first we could not show houses. So what do you do? And then it was that was temporary. But it was still drastic because what do you do if you can't show houses? So then after that, it was okay, well, how do you get clients? And it became video. So video became huge for consultations because we couldn't meet, my actual brokerage office was closed. So we couldn't, traditionally, I meet buyers at my office. We have a consultation in person. And so there was no longer that. So it was like, okay, what do you do now? You got to get you have to have a way to communicate with people. And so it became video. It became more social media. It became finding things to connect with people who were going through things, providing services. I did a few things in the pandemic, such as because, salons were shut down. So I
I know.
talk to some of my salon, some people who do my esthetician, people who do eyebrows, and people who do hair and nails. And we did a Zoom just dedicated because people couldn't get to the salon. So people grew their eyebrows back out. Your nails were, no nails. You had to start doing your own things, but people needed that service. So that was one of the services that I did provide during that time of just coming from, we are all trying to get through this. And I know you want your nails done. I know you need your eyebrows done. How can you, tweak them a little bit on your own? And so business, so that was the pivot that I did is one, reaching into, how are you with, that was another thing. How are you? Not necessarily, do you want to buy or sell a house? Do you want to are you okay? How are things going? How's the transition? Just checking on people became, but that was always something that I did. But it was in that time, it was really like, are you good? Hey, just hi, just hi. And definitely business wise, it pivoted to video. And then eventually we were able to get back to showing houses with masks, and you had to carry gloves. So I had to, buy gloves, buy sanitizer, and the search for sanitizer became a thing. I still actually have a big, like a half gallon of sanitizer left because that's how much I was buying it, because that's how much we were using it. And it was hard to get. So yeah, so that's what happened during the pandemic. And then everything was going well. It was, business started back going good. And then personal tragedy struck, which my mom passed in July 2020. So that was, of course, a different type of pivot. But, in real estate, as realtors, a lot of times you still have to work through certain things. Luckily, I had the support of my colleague, Adam, and a few different people during this time frame who helped out, because of course you're not in the right mindset if anybody's ever been through that. You're not equipped to be the best for anyone during that time frame. So he helped me out a lot with working with my clients through that personal time.
That's so important that you had, a network is great, but if you at least have one person that you can reach out, because, at the end of the day, we're professionals, but we're also human beings too. And stuff happens.
And I'm gonna say, just not Adam, but definitely all of my realtor friends were like, what do you need? How can we help you? How can we support you during this time? Because, when you work in a traditional job, there's usually somebody who can just usually a person that's actually just appointed, but you have to have those relationships with people who can help you during that time, because, sometimes there are personal things that you really just cannot be there, but people still need to get where they're going. Because what happened in my life, that doesn't mean that my client, my client still needs to get through the process of buying their home, and getting to their next home or selling their home or whatever. So that's another thing to think about. And that's another thing that I would say in business, having leverage. Now I have a assistant. I also have a transaction coordinator, and then I also work with showing partners so that if things do happen, I'm not always showing houses. So if you need to see a house, I'm not always there's somebody else that can show it to you if I'm not here, or if I'm not if I can't be here for whatever reason. So that did teach me a little bit more about having that leverage as well.
Shawanda, you're licensed in basically all over the DMV to serve, but how would you describe, I guess, your target market? Is it more like young families who are starting out, buying that first home? Is it people who are looking to, upgrade, looking for that next home? Or is it, folks who are looking to retire and maybe downsize? How's your, I guess, your audience, if you will? How would you describe them?
Yeah, so I would say what you said is actually a really good picture because I enjoy working with different people. I love the move down buyers because that also is important to me because it reminds me of mom and dad, and so being able to work with those people who are like, okay, I've been in this house for 35 years. I raised all my kids here, and now the house is just too big for me. And being able to relate to those people in that situation because I've been there, of course, and will be there again more than likely soon. But that those buyers are definitely important to me because they need a little bit extra TLC sometimes because this process of buying and selling can be a very overwhelming process, especially if you don't have someone who's going to really explain or make you feel comfortable in the process, or someone that you can trust. So it is really important to me to help those people, the people who don't really know, and the people because people take advantage of our wonderful elders sometimes, and they need a person that's going to look out for them instead of just not be look out for their best interests. So I definitely work a lot with those with people who are moving down, and also people who are moving up. Sometimes I have a lot of buyers now who they brought their first home when I have buyers who brought in 2015 and 2016 who now maybe they've increased their family size. And now they're like, okay, I'm ready to get a larger house. We had another child. We have 2 more kids. The house worked then and it doesn't now. So I work with those people as well, and definitely with the new buyers through that process. So I work with right now. I still enjoy all aspects of it. Yeah.
Shawanda, how do you, and those are all those scenarios, those phases of life that we just referred to. They're pretty significant, whether you're sizing up or you're downsizing or right sizing, as some people like to call it. They're pretty significant in a person's life. Let's focus on the upsizing, the either the getting the initial piece of real estate or upsizing. How do you, or what do you say to your clients, or what conversations do you have in talking to them about how important this is in terms of building generational wealth? What are some of the conversations you have with them around that?
Yeah, so absolutely. So recently I've been working with a young couple that they haven't started having children yet. They're married, but this is the perfect time for them, and they also understand that what they get now, I'm focusing them on not just right now but future, right? So it's okay to not have the biggest house, your first house. Get this house, stay in it a few years, then you can get the bigger house because more than likely you've accumulated equity in this first house. Buy it in a place that's you'll be able to rent it out, check to see if it's rentable, which more than likely in this area we have as many renters as buyers, pretty much. So it's I know that. So where they're looking at is Baltimore, and Baltimore is actually even more renter heavy than say DC or DC or Virginia. But the thing is, you have to start somewhere, and that's why the term starter house came. We somehow got away from being able to like get the house and then say, okay, well, I'll get my next house. It's even though you have a 30-year mortgage, you're not dedicated to stay there 30 years. You don't have to stay there 30 years. You still have to pay them. You have 30 years to pay the mortgage, but you don't have to physically remain in the house for 30 years. And it's best to, get a house, a starter house. And then if you want to rent it out, or if you sell it, whichever one works best, because some people it's best for them to rent it out. But that's easier than coming up with an investor loan down the line. Because if you purchase your house, you've lived in the house, and then you decide, oh, I want another house, that house you can turn into an investment property easier than coming up with what you would need for investor loans, say 10, at least 10-15%. When you purchase your first home, you usually probably put down 3 to 5%. So that's a big difference in how much cash you need to get an investment. So look at your first house as really the investment, either if you want to buy it, hold it, or if you want to eventually sell it when you want your next house.
That's smart. That's
and
smart.
Then another thing, one thing I also, for younger couples, a lot of times you can also, and I'm not going to say for younger couples, for couples, anyone, honestly, you can take that house if you have things that you want to do, meaning you have things that you want to do. You stay in a house for 5 to 10 years, you usually accrue equity. Home loans are usually the cheapest interest rate. So you can always still, whether that is you want to like send a child to school, if you want to start a business, if you want to buy a new car, it's still usually always better or cheaper to purchase it through a mortgage, because that's usually always the cheapest and the lowest, that is, interest rate, opposed to a credit card. A house loan is, right now we're in like 6s, 5 and 6s. But if you get a car or a credit card, your credit card is 18, 20%. So when you look at it, okay, well, if I have this money in my house, I could probably do a home equity loan of credit, or I could refinance and pull out money. So it's the way of knowing all of the benefits that you can do with your home. So I try to stress that to my clients.
That's wonderful. One of the things that I know that you are involved in, that part of my law practice involves probate or estate administration. And many times there's a piece of real estate, the decedent's home either needs to be sold, or a decision needs to be made about the home, but a lot of times it's usually sold. And we're reaching out to our network. How do you get involved? Describe that to the audience. How do you become involved in that probate process of dealing with that piece of property?
Yes. So I've definitely done several or worked with several probate or estate sales. Most recently, I did one in Bowie. And when I got involved, so I've been involved in various stages. I've been involved where they didn't know that they needed to start a probate case. They just knew that they wanted to sell the house. They knew that the house, passed down to them because they were the closest heir. However, they thought that they were able to just, we're the heirs and we can sell it. And so I've been at that process too, where they didn't know. And I'm like, okay, no, these are the steps. I've connected, people with attorneys if necessary, or also connected them with how to, the local, whatever jurisdiction, these are the steps that you need to take to go to the courthouse to start your probate case for your loved one. So I've been in that process. I've stepped in sometimes when they have already gone through the probate process.
Mhm.
and they just need to be able to sell the house. So most recently, that was the case with one of my most recent probate cases. They've already done that process of knowing that they have their letter of administration, which means that they can sell, but they needed to still get things out of the house. So, a lot of times when there are estate sales, people who have lived in the houses sometimes 30, 40 years, there's a lot of stuff that has been accumulated over that time. So in this particular situation, I connected my client with a company that helps with personal estate sales. So of personal items that were in the house, they come in and they inventory every single thing down to a pin in the house. And then they see what they can sell, and they do an online estate sale and an in-person estate sale. And then whatever they can't sell, they will donate to charity or trash, which takes a huge burden off of people who are already grieving.
That is so important, and I'm so glad that you mentioned them, because they're a company. They do this for a living. You don't. I mean, I've seen situations where the personal representative feels so overwhelmed, like, oh, I've got to go through all these boxes. No, you don't. Yet there are people, there are professionals that do this stuff. They will pack it up. People are concerned, oh, they're just going to trash everything in the house. No, they exercise care. You not only get the appraisals, the valuations for things, expensive jewelry, what have you, artifacts, all those things. There are people that come in to assist you, and you don't have to go through this by yourself. Again, going back to that theme of having a team. Around you.
Yes. And this process, so I just want to speak to also that the importance of what you do in having people plan this process instead of them having to go through a probate, because it is a time when people are the most vulnerable. You are grieving, your mom, your brother, your whomever, your loved one. And so that process, just the grief process, is enough. And then attempting to having to go to the courthouse, having to figure out this, thinking, well, what would my loved one may have wanted me to do with the house? Do they want me to keep it? Should I sell it? So it's a lot of emotions and a lot, it's a lot. So having somebody that can help you through the process, and it's better. So one of my, I was talking with my broker last night. And so one of my favorite terms this year is get somebody else to do it. Right. So, like, get somebody else to do it. So even if it costs you the estate to do it, it's better than you mentally going through all of these things, trying to do your own estate sale, trying to see what's going on, packing up the house, finding people to do this, finding people to do that. This company, they tell you they take a certain percentage off of what's sold. They tell you the prices for this, they tell you the prices for that. Pay it and keep your peace of mind, because you're already going through enough. You're still grieving most of the time when you're doing this process. And sometimes you don't make the best decisions when you're grieving, because that's the process of, the process of grief doesn't allow you to.
That's so important, Shawanda. I mean, and again, this is, people don't have to start from scratch with this. Because of the relationship, the professional relationships that you have developed and continue to develop over time, you have these resources, right? And I imagine this is, one of the many services that you offer. You can then turn to that person and say, I've got a list, I've got a network of people. What is it that you need? I think you need X. So that person who is, as you said, grieving, doesn't have to Google or go online to try, because you don't know where to start, because that's not what they do. People don't, go through probate, every year, right?
No, this is definitely usually a new experience for mostly this is the first time for most of my clients that have gone through this process. This is the first time that they have had to do this. So it's a new experience. One, home buying or home selling is usually already a new experience, but then you tack on having to go through court, having to deal with other, it's not just you selling, you're selling on behalf of your loved one, and you're still wanting to honor their wishes. You're still not wanting to just take their stuff and throw it in the trash sometimes. You don't really, it's so many emotions attached to this process. So yeah, you definitely need good professionals behind you in this process, so that you're not the biggest thing too in this process is being taken advantage of, because a lot of people do prey on people in this situation because it is one of your most vulnerable times.
Shawanda, after, say, that company, the company we're referring to, comes in, they package things, stuff may be, sold, I guess, at an estate sale.
Yes.
Do you then, and if they turn to you and say, okay, now, all the personal stuff, all the personal property has been moved out, reallocated to whomever, we want to sell the house. The house, I'm sure, is going to need, may need work. It may need staging. What are the things that you assist the clients in at that point?
Yeah. So at that point, depending on, because each property, of course, each client, each property is going to vary. But in most situations, once all of the items are out, I would view the home again, assess if it's best, if it's, certain places and certain areas, you can sell a house vacant, no problem. Some places, or, depending on the size of the house, or maybe sometimes the location, people don't have the same vision. Sometimes when you see the house, or the size of the house can also be a deterrent. So at that time, when the house is empty, if I believe that it's, able to sell without it, of course, why get another expense of staging? But if it needs it, or we can do things like virtual staging sometimes, which shows vacant places with furniture in it. So
that's fascinating. I've never heard of that. So virtual staging. Oh, wow.
Yes, but it has to be a vacant place. So if it's vacant, you can have someone come in and they'll do imaging, and they'll show the house with furniture items, a bedroom with beds, a living room with all of the living room things, so that you can visualize, so people can visualize the space, because home ownership and people looking for homes starts online. And so that's why video, professional photography and videos are very important, because those are the first things that people look at, and that's what draws them into either coming to the house or not coming to the house.
Yeah.
So if they can see, okay, so if they're just looking at pictures, especially if it's like sometimes if it's a small or not understandable, if you're not clear what the space is, you need that staging so people can see, oh, okay, so this is what it would look like if I, put my bed here or do this. And so offering those services too, because virtual staging, of course, is more cost efficient than actual staging. So those are the times. So after it's empty, we'll come, I'll go back and I will look at the house and come to that, what my professional opinion is on what would be best. If we're able to sell it vacant, we'll do that. If not, virtual staging, and if necessary, then the professional staging. And from then I would go ahead and have the photography done and get the home on the market.
Shawanda, as we are getting to wrap up in a few minutes, I wanted to make sure and ask you about what you do, because you're passionate about this, about educating. What are some of the things that you do or have been involved in that involve teaching and educating the public, like whether it's workshops and whatnot?
Yes, so absolutely. I definitely have done several home buying as well as home selling workshops, because a lot of times people are first-time home sellers. So you don't know what to do. You know the buying process because you were on that side, but even if it had been 5 or 10 years ago, the buying process now is different. So you still probably need a buyer workshop if you're buying another place. But I definitely do different workshops. I actually have a workshop coming up on the 21st for home buyers. Okay. And that's we're labeling this one as a buyer's boot camp. So because the holiday conversation a lot of times is, oh, I want to buy a house next year. I want a new house, So this is to get people who are ready to buy, but they don't know where to begin, to get rid of some of the myths that are in the media as far as interest rates are concerned. To help them know that the best thing is to work, to focus on your payment and not so interest rates, because you have so much leverage when you do get the house, even if your rate is not necessarily high. I won't like to say that these interest rates are normal interest rates. Let me say that real quick.
Let me put up your information, because since that boot camp is coming up, if they want to not only find out more about you, but also get involved and register for this boot camp, I'm going to leave that information on there for a minute.
Okay.
I also want to ask you, where do you've done so much. I mean, wow, talk about perseverance and like a rebirth into a new career. You're doing well and you're serving, right?
Yeah.
You're actually helping people, which is something that really resonates with me. You have this heart of service. Where do you see yourself in like 5 years with your business?
So in 5 years, I would definitely say that I see myself still definitely helping people with buying, selling, investing. I'm also I would definitely think that I'm going to lean more in these next 5 years into mentorship, because that is something that I am now started at the end of 2022 with mentoring agents, because as like I said, I learned a lot. I learned a lot in my starting as an agent. So I feel that I'm able to pass that on to others, and that's another way of, paying it forward, if you will. So I see myself relying heavily on the mentoring, possibly being my own brokerage as well, which that's another way of helping agents and helping people still. So probably those are the things that I foresee for me in the next 5 years. And having a complete team of people so that I'm able to have more leverage. So yes.
That's wonderful. And again, I'm going to put your information up one more time. If you can tell folks, where you are on social media, so people can follow you and support you.
Yes. So I am on every single platform, most major platforms, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok. My handle is at Shawanda Sold It on all of those platforms. So as it's pictured there, SHAWANDA SOLDIT. You should be able to find me on every one of those major platforms there.
Wonderful. Shawanda, it has been a joy. It's been educational. I mean, I love my guests, and thank you so much for being the first guest on this rebranded podcast, Wills, Women, and Wealth. It's really been a pleasure learning from you, and just hearing about all the work that you're doing, how you help people, how you build them, assist them in building generational wealth, and how to protect what they're working so hard to build.
Yeah.
I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so
Again,
much.
I want to thank you for being my guest and sharing so much of your time here today. Everyone, Shawanda T. Robinson, she's a realtor serving the DMV. You've gotten her information, and if you're catching this on the replay, you'll also see her information in the show notes. Shawanda, it's been a joy. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. And I appreciate you so much for having me. And everyone have a great day, and reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Everyone, she was a fabulous guest. And this is the kind, I wanted to set the tone of what this rebranded podcast is about. I'm going to bring you thought leaders, experts in particular areas, but they all intersect in one way or another with what I do, which is wills and estate planning, as well as probate, which Shawanda and I talked about. If you have any needs in the Maryland or District of Columbia area regarding wills, estate planning, and probate, I want to invite you to give our office a call. No obligation, free 15-minute call. You see the information at the bottom of the screen. We too are active on social media. This podcast as well, this episode as well as future episodes will be available in our growing YouTube library as well as on Spotify. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, this is Elsa W. Smith, your Maryland estate planning attorney, thanking you for attending this episode of Wills, Women, and Wealth. Make it a great day.